And this is a presentation about open house emergency use shelter and residential services. Currently, our referral rates have been extremely low. We want to do something about that. We want to be able to reach as many youth in the community as possible. And one way we thought we could do this is to give an informational video informing school counselors and school social workers about our program and what we do, in hopes that you all might know of some youth that could need our services. So I'll go ahead and get right to it. So who do we serve? Coastal Horizons Open House Emergency Youth Shelter serves homeless, runaway, street, troubled, abused, and or neglected youth, both male and female, ages 6 to 18, so they can stay up until their 19th birthday. And the placement is completely voluntary. And what we mean by this is that when the youth come into the shelter, they sign an agreement, going over all of our rules and regulations and stating that they will abide by those. And it also lets them know that they are there by free will. And if they so choose to leave, they may do so, but there will be consequences. Those consequences being that we will contact local law enforcement and call them in as a runaway. And this kind of goes into the cognitive behavioral approach that we take, where there really are a lot of consequences and rewards that we hope will get the youth to start making better decisions on their own. And this is just another example of how we do that. So the services that we offer, all services are confidential and free to youth and their families, which is really awesome. They don't have to have any kind of insurance. We're completely grant funded. So our services are free to the youth and their families. And some of the basic services, we are an emergency shelter. We work with people in crisis. We offer long-term residential services, respite care, and clinical services. And these include individual, group, and family therapy. As I said before, all of which are free. And I wanted to touch base about the long-term residential services, which I'll go into later, but our DSS custody youth are able to stay over 90 days. Sometimes it's a few months. I believe it could be up to like longer than a year. And those are for the DSS custody youth, but I will get into that a little bit more in a minute. So our emergency shelter services, we accept new clients 24 hours a day. There are 2 residential counselors on staff from 3 p.m. on into the evening. All that are here to do the referral process. So if at any time you feel that they need to come in or there's a referral, it can be done 24 hours a day. The emergency shelter stay is 21 days or less. And this is what I was referring to earlier. If a youth is not DSS custody and rather is in their parents' custody, then the maximum amount they can stay is 21 days. And within that 21 days, there's mandatory family counseling sessions that happen once a week. And during that time, my clinical supervisor and the youth and the youth family all come up with a game plan as to what is going to best serve that youth within the 21 days. And it obviously goes by really fast. So they work really hard to come up with short-term and long-term goals to get them where they need to be. And the youth may sign themselves in for up to 24 hours without a legal guardian's permission. If they just feel that they need to get away for a 24-hour period for whatever reason being, they're able to do so. And after that 24-hour period is when there is a mandatory family session, when a parent will need to come in and sign some things and do paperwork and show that they are committed to the change as well. And this may be needed if the youth is a runaway or is homeless, the 24-hour care. LE or DSS on-call social worker removes youth from home. That's another example of times that this our services may need to be utilized. Respite care services, youth of families in crisis or who are experiencing conflict, from what I've seen, has usually been the most common. And the respite stay is usually 21 days or less. They could come in for a couple days. Sometimes it's all that the family really needs, but we're here to help them with that. And depending upon the individual needs of the family, counseling and case management will be provided, which, like I said before, is totally free, which is really awesome because it's hard to find any kind of health services these days that is completely free, and especially mental health. So that's a great bonus about what we do. Now, for the long-term residential services, for those, like I said, that would be DSS custody, is equivalent to that of a regular foster care facility. And Open House has been licensed for long-term care since December of 2011. And the shelter stay is 90 days or more, as I've mentioned, and it serves as kind of like a permanent residence for these youth. Okay, the clinical counseling services. There's weekly psychoeducational groups led by rape crisis staff and interns. The youth are check-in weekly with a residential counselor. And something I should mention about this, as far as the residential counselors, they are constantly with the youth throughout their time. But as far as the check-ins, the clinical supervisor usually meets with them once a day, honestly, to do a check-in with the youth and do a clinical session if needed to just see where they're at and to monitor their progress, which is really great. And clinical supervisor and clinical interns provide support counseling to youth and families who need, which is really great that there's also family counseling involved too. And free clinical services for up to 90 days post-discharge. So once a youth has left the shelter, they are able to come back and receive clinical counseling services up to 90 days after they've left, totally free of charge, which is another really great perk. You know, sometimes there's curveballs thrown at us, and if there's something that happens, they feel like they need to come talk to us, they're more than welcome to do so. And what is life like at Open House? What would a typical day be like for a youth that's staying in our shelter? Well, the youth share a bedroom with up to 2 other same-sex youth. Now, how this works is the maximum capacity are 9 youth at one time. And we have 3 rooms, each have 3 beds. So one would be, probably all male, all female, and then the third just kind of depends on, who's in that bedroom. If there's more female, then there'd be 2 female rooms, 1 male, and vice versa. So that's how our bedrooms are set up. And there are family-style meals and snacks. And I just wanted to speak to this personally from having been at Coastal Rises as an intern and being able to partake in these wonderful meals. It's really such a great experience because it's just as if, you're kind of eating with family. There's a great meal, home-cooked meal, and it's very structured at the shelter, which is something that is obviously strategically done and something that really helps benefits the youth. But the meals are just a great time for everyone to sit down together and discuss what's been going on in their day and just to kind of relax and have and enjoy one another. And I just think that that's a really great thing that a lot of these youth probably wouldn't have otherwise. There are daily chores. As I mentioned before, it's very structured during the weekdays. Once the youth come in from school, it immediately goes to study time, which is about an hour and a half. And from there, they clear the table. They set the table for dinner, and we have that wonderful family meal. And after that, once everyone is finished, then it's time for chores, which are all delegated to the youth depending on how many are there. They'll each have more chores to do, depending. But they all immediately get to their chores. And after that, depending on whether or not they have their privileges, they can watch television or even play video games. So it's really neat. I know a lot of other shelters are not like that. However, if they've lost privileges, for instance, one of the most common are we give each youth called the golden ticket, and they have to have each of their teachers sign off on it, saying that they were in class that day, and that just proves that they were actually in school. So there's no issues with absences or truancy. So if they've done everything they were supposed to, there hasn't been any instances with them talking back to like a residential counselor, and they've gotten their golden ticket, they've got their privileges, then they can watch television, they can play video games, and some of like the bigger privileges are they get to go see a movie. They can pick a residential counselor that they would like to accompany them, and they can go see a movie. And they do a lot of fun outings on the weekends as well. Get outside and do different. We have a certain amount of hours of criteria we have to meet with the youth, where they'll do a cultural outing or something related to vocational or recreational, and it's just a really great opportunity to expose these youth to some things that they probably wouldn't have had a chance to do otherwise. Now, if they don't have their privileges, then they can still play board games or card games, which we've actually found a lot of the youth prefer to do, which is pretty neat. They really enjoy just sitting, having someone to talk to. And if there is a major consequence, they might have to do like a deep clean and spend their free time that way. But as I said before, the CBT is all about consequences and rewards, and it's very structured, and it works really, really well. They're outings in the community on a weekly basis, as I spoke to, or as I touched on earlier, and the structured daily activities in addition to free time to play games and watch TV. So if you have any further questions or you'd like to take a tour of the shelter, you can contact Brianne Winterton or Camber at 392-6936, and they can answer any further questions you might have. But I thank you all so much for your time, and I really hope that this was informative for you. Thanks.